Welcome to State View. I'm Mark Crosby. Thank you for joining us. State View is a program that looks at, legislation on Beacon Hill and helps you to stay informed as to how that would affect you living here in the Commonwealth. Joining me today from the 1st Norfolk District, we have Representative Bruce Ayers. Representative, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Mark. It's nice to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
And I love the fact that you take up the invite every time we put it out there for you.
Right. It's a nice way to let our constituents know, the residents know what we're debating on Beacon Hill.
Let's start by talking about Joint Rule Number 10. It's a procedural bill deadline.
Yeah, we just recently had the Joint Rule 10 deadline. And what that is, Mark, is every legislative session, legislators compile a list of all their bills and file them. And there's thousands of bills. Each bill, depending on the content of the bill, gets assigned a certain committee. And legislators advocate for those bills throughout the whole process. The bill will go to the committee, be assigned a public hearing. People get a chance to testify in support or opposition. But the Joint Rule 10 deadline is kind of a benchmark where it gets to the point in the process where the bill either moves on favorably or it dies. So I've been fortunate. Some of the bills that we've talked about on previous shows have made it to the next step, going through the legislative process. I know a few that we talked about. One had to do with early onset Alzheimer's, and what that bill does is it removes the 60-year-old age provision, so residents who have been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's can take advantage of some of the Mass Health Frail Elder Waiver services. Another bill was related to increasing the fines on animal cruelty, and the fine increase, the money generated from those fines, would go back to the city or town where the violation occurred, and it would be used to supporting their animal shelters. Another bill that we talked about also was studying the feasibility of ferry services in Boston Harbor. We live in a coastal community, and what this would do is give us good data on some of the costs associated with ferry services in and around Boston Harbor, so that we can plan accordingly with some of the future plans with water used as an alternative means of transportation. So I thank you for talking with you before, and even some of the residents that called our office after to weigh in.
Absolutely, and we're glad to play a part in that, sharing of information to folks throughout the Commonwealth, and we will continue to do that. Let's talk about the subject of drones and schools.
The subject of drones, this legislation, this idea came from the National Conference of State Legislators. This is an organization made up of state legislators in each state throughout the country where we share ideas, policies, and legislation. And one of the areas that came up in concern was the use of drones and subject to school safety. It's a difficult subject to talk about, school safety, but it's something we have to be aware of. And I filed this bill to be more proactive around school safety. Drones nowadays are equipped with high-level cameras that can take photographs from hundreds of feet away. They can carry up to 10 pounds. With school safety, last year I think there were over 3,300 threats to schools nationwide, and that was a 62% increase. So what this bill would do is put restrictions on a no-fly zone over schools, all early, elementary, middle, and high schools, unless they had written permission from the superintendent. Unfortunately, the FAA, the federal agency, does not have any restrictions, so it kind of leaves it up to the states to put together a no-fly zone. So the legislation would still allow for appropriate uses of drones, so if it was graduation or a sports event, but other than that, they would need written permission. It's just a way of putting another safeguard, to protect their privacy, their rights and their safety. our students, teachers, and educators are under enough pressure. The last thing they want to worry about is a drone hovering above them, invading their privacy or potentially being a safety threat.
Absolutely. Certainly enough to worry about. And the next topic, addiction. Certainly the pandemic has overshadowed addiction, the opioid crisis, let's say. It still exists. It's actually, because of the pandemic, actually gotten worse. So talk about the addiction treatment resolution.
Sure. This is a resolution urging Congress to update the Drug Addiction Treatment Act of 2000. And you're right, Mark. With the news over the last 2 years, COVID-19 has dominated the airwaves, and rightly so. But we still have a problem even more concerning with opioid abuse going on. I think the studies, the latest studies from January to September were 1,631 deaths in Massachusetts. And it plays a significant role on people losing their job, also housing concerns. So, what this resolution would do would urge Congress to allow doctors to be able to prescribe epinephrine, which is a key component in Suboxone. Back in 2000, when these were being administered, they didn't have the knowledge or the information that they know today. Now, epinephrine, when combined with Narcan, is Suboxone, proven to be an opioid symptom that reduces the opioid cravings and also withdrawal symptoms. But what happens is doctors are under stringent requirements now to be able to prescribe this. They have to do an 8-hour training. They have to take an exam. They also have to get a license from the DEA. It's the only Schedule III drug that requires this kind of rigid training and educational process. So we're urging Congress to kind of update this resolution, to be able to let doctors and physicians prescribe Suboxone so we can help combat the opioid crisis.
And it is, in fact, still a crisis. Let's talk about seniors and senior care legislation.
Yeah, we recently passed another couple senior bills that we've been working on that deal with senior care. One bill that would address assisted living facilities. Now, this legislation would allow assisted living centers to opt in to be able to offer more services in those assisted living facilities. Things like services they necessarily couldn't always offer before, like management of oxygen, insulins, ointments, drops, and other services that would have maybe prevented people from staying in an assisted living facility where they may have been forced to go to a more expensive nursing home facility. So this is something now that will be out there so they can opt into providing extra services for our seniors to kind of keep them in a community center there rather than a nursing home facility. And the other had to do with home care workers. These home care workers deserve an awful lot of credit. They're frontline workers. They worked through the COVID. This would allow them to get hazard pay. They wouldn't have to go through other stringent requirements to be able to get that pay. It would allow them to get ongoing worker training in elder abuse and confidentiality and infections training. So these are the things that we're trying to do to help our seniors get a better level of care and protect our seniors.
Absolutely, because we're all going to be there one day, and they certainly deserve respect and help.
A lot of these, like you say, Mark, the ideology around it is we want to be able to keep our seniors at home in the right environment, in a loving environment, or an environment with a family member. So a lot of these goals and pieces of legislation are all geared towards that.
Let's talk about the National Guard Caucus.
Well, I was just recently appointed House Chair of the National Guard Caucus, which I get to chair with my good friend and colleague, Senator John Vilas. The purpose of the caucus is to work with other members of the state legislature. There's about 50 members, a bipartisan group, to work with them to make sure that the National Guard is being able to kind of go forward with their legislative initiatives and budget priorities. Now, we'll be working with Adjutant General Keefe and also Jason Overton, Colonel Jason Overton. He's the Director of Strategic Policy and Planning. He's a decorated Army veteran and did 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's a Quincy resident. So we're going to be taking a closer look at their goals, their objectives, to see what we can do to help them. A lot of times at the State House, some of the bills with veterans can be commingled. So these caucuses will be designed to listen, to learn more, to how we can help the Guard members. You know, a good example was COVID-19. You know, they are out there on the front line. You know, some of the procedures they were doing was helping with vaccination sites that were popping up all over the Commonwealth. They were going into our school to help with vaccination pool testing with the kids, helping out with understaffed hospitals, and also providing transportation to seniors to the hospitals. So the Guard is always there, where if there's a disaster or an emergency, you know, the first ones to step up. So it's a great opportunity for the legislators to take this responsibility on. You know, there's 45 armories in the Commonwealth and 2 major bases, one in Westford and one in Falmouth. So we're looking forward to helping them out with what they need.
The next topic ends up being a topic that pops up a lot on these programs. That's the Long Island Bridge and the future of that area. We should mention that the Boston Mayor, Michelle Wu, is really, it sounds like she's against having the bridge rebuilt.
Well, she seems open to alternative means of transportation.
Okay.
You know, during the campaign, she was stating that. But, you know, it's hard to say. You know, we're obviously the Quincy officials are following it very closely because of our vested interests in protecting the area. All the officials have done a great job. Mayor Koch, Senator Keenan, Councilor Harris, in making sure that the constituents of Squantum concerns were addressed in protecting the community. The latest concern, though, is that, you know, the condition of the pilings.
Which we will see on screen momentarily.
Yeah, what happened was the city of Quincy had put together a report from an engineering consultant, David Gress, back in 2018. Which was administered by the mayor. And this report showed that the pilings, the overall condition of the pilings, were in really bad shape. You know, they're 75 years old. They're severely corroded. You know, they had to withstand the demolition and the blast. You can kind of see here the aerial view of what we're looking at. These would never be able to hold a superstructure today. And this was all pointed out in the Boston Harbor Impact Review study done by the Mass Bay Harbor and Safety Council. You can see here that one of the granite stones is coming right off one of the pilings. You know, the Gress report outlined clearly that they were severely deteriorated, and they have basically outlived its use. You know, this was all ignored in the City of Boston's Boston Harbor Navigation Impact Study. And, you know, we had this brought to the attention. You know, I recently addressed this with Captain Benson, who's the commander of the Coast Guard, and also with the Mass Bay Harbor Public Safety Committee. They're like an advisory committee to the Coast Guard, but in addressing this, there needs to be a closer look at the condition of these pier pilings to see how much they could withstand. Right now, they're a navigational hazard to boaters, and they really have outlived its use. So it's something I think the Coast Guard has to take a closer look at. They have the jurisdiction over this. So we'll keep you updated as things progress and how they're going to be handling it.
I would imagine that to build a new bridge on top of old pilings, especially if they're in poor condition, doesn't make any sense at all.
That's right. And, you know, as you alluded to earlier, it's still hard to say what Mayor Wu is going to do, whether she's going to use a ferry or maybe she changes her plans. But, you know, as public officials, we have to stay vigilant to make sure that we're watching everything that's happening. And the lawsuit between the two cities, the city of Boston and Quincy, is still proceeding. So we'll keep you up to date as things progress.
While we're on the topic of bridges, just briefly talk about bridges that are under multiple jurisdiction, that bill.
Yeah, there's a bill now that we're working with in the legislature. It's similar, Mark, to what you see in a lot of different cities and towns, where you may need more scrutiny on the input and planning that goes into connecting bridges between two cities or a city or a town. One might have a rural area that goes into a densely populated area, and they may have different needs, you know, whether it gets into the infrastructure of the design, the planning, sewer, water, drain, some of the environmental impacts. Both cities would have to come up with a municipality agreement to make sure that all other, you know, uses of transportation may be exhausted, or come up with additional measures that would protect the overall buffer zone in that area.
Because we're looking at Long Island, and although it is owned by the city of Boston, it does, to get there, except by use of a ferry, would involve another municipality, namely Quincy.
Yes, it's a great example. This bill would encompass that, along with other bridges throughout the Commonwealth. You know, right now there's, I think the last report is 462 structurally deficient bridges in the Commonwealth under the mass transit. So that's something the state is really looking into. We have ARPA funds we're going to be designating towards those bridges, so we have some money coming that way.
I know that down my way, the Bourne and the Sagamore bridges are slated to be replaced.
Yes, that's right. I saw that.
Yeah. I just I cringe when I think of the traffic backup during that particular time. But again, you know, those bridges are old, and it would and deemed necessary to have replaced. Let's talk about the state budget, because we are basically in mid-February at this point.
Yes, Governor Baker just came out with his budget, $48.5 billion budget. The House and the Senate will come up with their own versions of the budget, but working with the Quincy delegation, you know, this is probably one of the most important things we do as legislators. You know, our role is to collectively work together to try to get as much money as we can for our districts. You know, Speaker Mariano, Representative Chan and Hunt, and of course Senator Keenan. It's a great delegation to work with. You know we have to get as much local aid as possible to assist the mayor and the city councilors with their goals and objectives. We also fight for Chapter 70 education money, Chapter 90 transportation money funding. In school committee, we're making sure that they can allocate their funds accordingly. You know, and along with that, you know, we want to make sure we're getting our fair share of state services. You know, and that would include state agencies like Mass State Police, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, and with the Mass State Police, we've reached out to them already, coming up on the budget to find out what we're going to need to make sure there's adequate protection in the city of Quincy this coming summer. You know, currently right now, the state police patrols are administered out of South Boston, the South Boston Barracks. There's 3 patrols that cover Dorchester, South Boston, and 10 miles of Interstate I-93. So what the delegation advocates for is to get a designated patrol for the city of Quincy to address concerns in the Wollaston Beach area, the Blue Hills area, Houghton's Pond, Shea Rink, Squantum Point Park. Things we're looking for to make sure that they're cracking down on littering, loitering, drinking, loud music, quality of life issues. So these are something that we've asked them to take all the necessary steps, whether it's additional patrols, marked, unmarked, motorcycles, bicycles, whatever needs to be done. Usually they'll try to do is set a strong precedent early spring to kind of set the tone. And the same goes with our parks. The Department of Conservation and Recreation that oversees the state parks, they have the responsibility. We've spoken to Commissioner Mooney and also our legislative liaison, Craig Cashman, to come out, to go to the different locations. And again, each area is very unique. Squantum Point Park is a huge parcel of land. You have the Blue Hills, you have Wollaston Beach. So what we like to do is to have them come out, do a site visit, be able to talk about the maintenance required, the manpower, the labor, how it will be addressed, and making sure there's no jurisdictional issues either with the city. So when springtime comes, we'll be able to make sure there's a good plan in place, whether it's for the parks or whether it's for the public safety of the residents in the area.
We should mention that taping this program just a few weeks after the governor of Massachusetts, Governor Charlie Baker, delivered his last State of the Commonwealth address. Just your thoughts on working with the governor during his time in office. The governor's been very good to Quincy. He, and I'm sure a lot of my colleagues would agree. He's been out to Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito have been out to Quincy quite a bit. They've assisted in a major role with the downtown redevelopment and other goals and objectives that the legislators have had. He was someone that you could work with. He'd reach across the aisle to work with the Democrats to try to come to a common ground in certain issues that we could work with to get the legislation moving forward. So it's going to be tough to see him go. So, but I think we benefited in the city of Quincy, and I wish him the best of luck in the future. Just briefly, maybe discuss or just maybe just an acknowledgement of the dynamics that take place here in Massachusetts. A blue state with a Republican governor, that can work, that functions here fine. What can Capitol Hill maybe learn from the model set up here in Massachusetts?
Well, that's a great example because, there's more of an open dialogue, more of a desire to work together, to come to a common goal, to get things done, to find out where we can work together in certain issues. And I think that was more of the governor's kind of leadership style. And he was very effective with that. It would be nice to see more of that down in Washington, D.C. But I think the governor deserves a lot of credit, along with the lieutenant governor, of establishing relationships over the years with the legislators, the senators, the reps, to find out what was important to them in their districts and being able to work together. That takes time, but there was a good working relationship with him.
I do want to let folks know that your office has changed, so your phone number is a bit different. We will have that. We probably have had that at the bottom of the screen. Maybe that could be brought up for us as we just get down to the end of the program and just talk about the importance of people contacting you. That certainly you're there to either through email or phone to receive their concerns.
Sure. And again, Mark, thank you very much. I appreciate that. People can contact my office at 722-2220. They can call me at home at 617-472-9877. But it's always encouraged, particularly now. It's a busy time of year on Beacon Hill. We're getting into the middle of the budget process, so if people want to weigh in on some of the issues that are important to them, budgetary initiatives we're going to be taking up, we certainly encourage that.
Very good. Well, you're welcome to come back to Quincy Access Television as well. The invitation always stands.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. And thank you at home for watching. Please continue to support local access television to be able to see more programs just like this.